All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Got a big one for you. So in just a second, we have a new poll, shocking poll, that came out. Was it Michigan or was it just Arab Americans overall? I think it was just Arab Americans overall in the country. Wow. Wild numbers. We'll talk about that. We'll get to Ben Shapiro absolutely celebrating the genocide in Gaza. What an absolute loathsome, repulsive, cretinous freak. Then we'll get to Obama at a rally, just absolute going to town on Trump. That's interesting. Chris Matthews slobbers over Liz Cheney. And later on, Tulsi Gabbard has now officially finished and completed her vile grift. It's now reached its logical conclusion, and there's a lot to say about that. So without any further ado, we'll jump into it. You guys know the drill. Please do me a big favor and click subscribe to the channel. That helps out big time. I would deeply, deeply appreciate it. And thank you again for everybody who supports this show on Patreon. Couldn't do it without you guys. Unlike many others in the space, we don't take any foreign government money or any billionaire money. I don't even talk to advertisers. So it's you guys and the default ads on YouTube that keep this show going. And I cannot thank you enough. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So Semaphore has this new article out. Trump holds edge with Arab Americans, according to a new poll. Donald Trump holds a razor-thin edge over Kamala Harris among Arab American voters, even as they view him as more supportive of Israel's government. According to a new Arab News and YouGov poll, 45% of respondents said they are most likely to vote for Trump, while 43% said they would likely cast ballots for Harris, according to the results shared early with Semaphore. Trump's edge is within the survey's margin of error. Another 4% said they would vote for Jill Stein. 6% said they were undecided, and 2% declined to say their choice. The results are similar to a survey released earlier this month by the Arab American Institute, which found Trump with 42% support and Harris with 41% support among Arab Americans. The ongoing conflict in Gaza has posed a challenge for both candidates as they seek to court Arab Americans. The rift over Israel within the Democratic Party has grown more pronounced as the conflict has stretched on. Kamala has walked a careful line between supporting the Biden administration's ceasefire efforts, please, there's no ceasefire effort, asserting Israel's right to defend itself and expressing concern about Palestinian casualties. Trump has largely avoided specifics about he'd approach the war as president, instead asserting that October 7th would have never occurred if he were in office. He has also used Palestinian as an insult against Democrats. He's accused of being insufficiently pro-Israel. Harris is campaigning Monday with Republican former Congresswoman Liz Cheney in 3 battleground states, including Michigan, which boasts a significant Arab American population. That, ladies and gentlemen, might be the single dumbest thing I've heard yet from the Kamala campaign. Look, Liz Cheney has the label of being a warmonger. She does. And when you are hemorrhaging Arab American and Muslim American voters in Michigan, maybe it's not a good idea to campaign with a warmonger there. Right? Maybe that's the place where you bring Tim Walz. Tim Walz expressed some understanding for people who were part of the uncommitted movement back when they were saying, you got to change the policy on Gaza. We're not going to support Biden unless you do that. You know, you have better people on the bench to send to a place like Michigan. I mean, also, you should just substantively change the policy and earn their votes the right way by doing the right thing. That goes without saying. But why wouldn't you send Bernie Sanders there? Why wouldn't you send Tim Walz there? Why wouldn't you send Keith Ellison, right? Like, what are you doing? What is this? What is this? Trump directly appealed to Arab Americans the same day, warning on Truth Social that the Middle East would spend the next 4 decades going up in flames if Harris is elected. Okay, this is the same dude who just the other day said Israel should bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. So under you, everything would go up in flames. You pulled out of the Iran agreement, which helped get us to this point. You allowed Israel to annex the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory, which got us to this point. You did the Abraham Accords, which was a giant middle finger to Palestinians, which got us to this point. What are you talking about? You killed Qasem Soleimani, which got us to this point. What are you talking about? Just the other day, he said Bibi should go further. He said Biden should stop holding Bibi back. What are we talking about here? God, he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. It's so fucking obnoxious. Quote, Arab voters are upset that Comrade Kamala Harris, the worst vice president in the history of the United States and a low IQ individual, is campaigning with dumb as a rock warhawk Liz Cheney, who, like her father, the man that pushed Bush to ridiculously go to war in the Middle East, also wants to go to war with every Muslim country known to mankind. Again, this is the guy who tried to do the Muslim ban, saying like, I'm going to be great for Muslims. Why are they being so mean to Muslims? Why are they trying to go to war with Muslim countries? Oh my God. Which administration is most likely to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict? This is a poll of Arab Americans. Ready? 39% say Trump, 33% say Kamala. 8% say Jill Stein. Wow. 6 points. 6-point difference there. Holy cow. According to the new poll, which surveyed 500 Arab Americans across the U.S. in late September, 39% said Trump is most likely to resolve the conflict. 33% said Harris. 29% named the Israeli-Palestine conflict as their top priority, while 21% said the economy and 21% answered cost of living. So in other words, it's the number one issue for Arab Americans, but it's still a plurality. It's not a majority. 29% say that's the most important thing. 21% say the economy. 21% say cost of living. So, wow. I mean, look, I have many thoughts about this, but if you go back, and this is an important fact to keep in mind, if you go back, but this is Muslim Americans, not necessarily Arab Americans, so it's a little bit of a different fact, but nonetheless, Muslim Americans voted nationally, it was 64% for Biden. And I think in Michigan in particular, it was 70% for Biden. So in other words, they were pretty overwhelmingly Democratic. It's not the most Democratic voting base in the country, but it's pretty solidly Democratic. And now this time, these polls are sort of telling a different story. Now, I will say, it's also one of those things where it's like, I'll kind of believe it when I see it, right? Because these polls can show that Trump is doing about the same as Kamala, a little better with these communities. But when push comes to shove in the election, what's going to happen? And I don't know the answer to that because we've seen this before. We've seen this narrative before of like, oh, Trump's doing way better with minority voters, bro. And then in 2020, it's like maybe the minor gains, but nothing insane, nothing crazy, right? And I wonder if that's going to be the case here too. Because the fact of the matter is, if the number one issue is Israel-Palestine, Trump is broadcasting and making perfectly clear and screaming from the rooftops, he's going to be more of a war hawk. He's going to be more aggressive. He's saying it. It's not, I'm not reading into what he's saying. He's laying it out. He's making it super duper clear. So now understand, I would perfectly understand if these voters came out and said, you know what, I'm going like Jill Stein, right? Because she has put front and center this issue and she has said, you know, we should have never been in this position, wholly condemns Israel and their savagery and their barbarism and their genocide. And like, you know, she's way more committed to actually doing something about it. So I'd understand that. But to say Trump over Kamala, that literally just makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense, especially because, and this has been widely reported, Trump took $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and the quid pro quo there is he needs to let Israel completely annex the West Bank. So, I mean, what do you want me to tell you? If your options are funding the genocide on the Democratic side or funding the genocide plus annexing the West Bank on the Republican side, right? And as Trump says, he's going to send more money. He's going to send more weapons. He's going to take off whatever minor tweaks around the edges, like when they held back the 2,000-pound bombs for a few weeks, right? Whatever minor tweaks around the edges were bucking against the Israeli government. Trump's like, fuck that. Remove all the chains and go full force, right? So logically, it makes no sense. Now, one other point to make is, what's the name of that mayor? I'm blanking on the name of the mayor, both his town and his name, but there was one Muslim mayor in the country who endorsed Trump and made a big show of it. And in that instance with that dude, he is super socially conservative, right? Super socially conservative. Basically an Islamist, right? And he supports Trump, is open about that fact. And then one also has to think, does that play a role in this in any way, shape, or form? But I mean, it defies all reason because Trump is also the guy who tried to do the Muslim ban, right? So I don't know. It's very bizarre. What is the overriding factor? Well, if you believe this poll and what they're saying, like I said, 29% say the number one issue to them is Israel and Gaza. And then you have 21% for the economy and 21% for cost of living, which if you put those two things together, our economy actually is number one. But yeah, this poll is definitely not good for the Democrats. And this is kind of what we were warning about all along, especially with the leaning into loving Liz Cheney strategy. It's like, it's a cost-benefit analysis. How much do you reach out to Republicans and how much do you try to shore up the base? Those things are at odds in many respects, right? And especially if you're bear-hugging elite war criminals, it's like, that's just not a good idea. I'd rather you take the right position morally and strategically on the issue of Israel and Gaza, break with Biden, give yourself some distance, shore up the Democratic base, shore up Arab Americans and Muslim Americans, and invite Republicans on board, but it's on your terms. It should be on your terms. You know, it should be, like we've said a million times, bring in a worker from the carrier factory. Trump said he was going to save those people's jobs. He didn't. He outsourced them anyway. Bring in somebody from the carrier factory who's a Republican who said Trump screwed me, and that's why I'm supporting the Democrats. That's how you reach out to Republicans. Make it working class Republicans. Don't fuck the elitist war criminals, right? So not good. Not good for Kamala, but I'm curious what the final results will be with this particular demographic come election time, because again, as unsatisfying as Kamala has been on this issue, and she's been pretty unsatisfying, Trump is just broadcasting that he's going to be way worse. So for him to lead, logically, makes no sense here. One more point that I wanted to bring up. One more point. So if the number one issue for this community is Israel and Gaza, it's a plurality, but it's the number one issue, right? What do the Israelis think? In Israel, 63%, according to a poll, support Trump. Only 20% support Kamala. So sticking it to Israel by giving them the candidate that they want, that they know is going to deliver for everything on their wish list, I don't know. Makes no sense. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.